You have already seen the margin, padding, and border properties at work during the first lecture. The properties used in that example are longhand, which allow control over the different sides of the box individually. The margin is an invisible space around your box. It pushes other elements away from the box. We can control all margins of an element at once using the margin property, or each side individually using the equivalent longhand properties. The equivalent longhand properties are as follows. The first is the margin top. This sets a margin to the top part of the element. The margin right sets a margin to the right side of the element. Margin bottom sets a margin to the bottom side of the element, and margin left sets a margin to the left side of the element. All the margin properties can have the following values: auto, length, percent, inherit. To shorten the code, it is possible to specify all the margin properties in one property. If the margin property has four values, know that the arrangement is going to be in this order: top, right, bottom, left. This is a clockwise manner: top, right, bottom, and left. Look at this example. We set a top margin to 25 pixels, a right margin to 50 pixels, a bottom margin to 75 pixels, and a left margin to 100 pixels. If the margin property has three values, that is, if you want to specify the top, right, left, and the bottom using the shorthand property, this is the way you are going to do it. The first value is going to be the top margin. The second one is going to work for the right and the left margin. The right and the left margin. And then the third value is going to be for the bottom. This is an example. We set a top margin of 25 pixels in this example, and we set a right and left margin of 50 pixels. Lastly, the third value applies to the bottom margin. If the margin property has two values, if the margin property has two values, what we are doing is we are setting a value that will attend to the top and the bottom margins, and the second value is going to specify the right and left margins. If the margin property has just one value, what we are doing is we are using the shorthand property to set the top, the right, the bottom, and the left margin using a single value. Borders. The border is drawn between the margin and the padding of a box. We have seen and explained this in the first lecture. If you are using the alternative box model, then the size of the border makes the contents box smaller as it takes up some of that available width and height. For styling borders, there are a large number of properties. There are four borders, and each border has a style, width, and color that we might want to manipulate. You can set the width, style of or color of all four borders at once using the border property. Remember, the four borders are the top border, the right border, the bottom border, and the left border. To set the properties of each side individually, you can either use the longhand properties for each side of the four sides, just like we saw on the margins. To set the width, style, or color of all sides, you can use the following properties: border width, border style, border color. The padding sits between the border and the content area. Unlike margins, you cannot have negative amounts of padding. So the value that you give your padding must be either zero or a positive value. Padding is typically used to push the content away from the border. We've also seen and explained this in the first lecture. You might want to make a reference to the first lecture. Any background applied to your element will display behind the padding behind the padding. We can control the padding on all sides of an element using the padding property. You can use the shorthand padding property or you can use the equivalent longhand properties.